Well, here we are at the end of another gruelling 12 months, and who'd have thought it? After all my outlandish predictions and hot takes, I'm back to take you through the last year. As 2022 draws to a close, we can look back on another memorable year in the world of Formula 1. The circus has had us captivated from January 1st, and although it may not have had the drama of the previous two campaigns, 2022 will still live long in the memory as we entered a new generation of Formula 1. So what are we waiting for? Let's jump in the time machine and head back to January. January. Formula 1 is always quiet in January, but a certain someone was even quieter. Whilst the drivers shared their snaps of their luxury holidays, Lewis Hamilton went off the grid in the aftermath of his dramatic title showdown with Max Verstappen just weeks earlier in Abu Dhabi. Fans waited for news on the futures of Michael Massey and the Brit. There was only room for one, but who would have to leave? Elsewhere in January, Novak Djokovic was detained by the Australian Border Force, and the first findings of Sue Gray's report into Partygate were published, the start of a tumultuous year for British politics. February. It all went down the following month. Lewis Hamilton versus Michael Massey. Who would stay? Who would go? Well, there was only ever one winner really, wasn't there? Michael Massey paid the price for a series of blunders in 2021 and was removed as F1 race director before starting a new role at the FIA. Hamilton, meanwhile, signed a new deal with Mercedes, guaranteeing his place on the Formula 1 grid. At the end of February, we got the first look at the 2022 cars on track as pre-season testing hit up Barcelona. With McLaren and the usual trio all leading the pack, it looked set for a competitive season. Oh, how wrong we were. COVID caught up with me in February as I tested positive for the first time. But let's see how much you remember about the second month of 2022. The Winter Olympics kicked off that month, but which city became the first to host both the Summer and Winter Games? We'll have the answers at the end of the video. March. March was a huge month for the world in general, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine escalated. As a result, Haas made the decision to dismiss Nikita Mazepin and bring back the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Magnussen. On the track, porpoising captured the headlines with horrible looking bouncing at high speeds. Worst affected were Mercedes, but more on that later. Formula 1 returned in March, and we were set for a showdown between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Believe it or not, the latter came out on top at the season opener in Bahrain. Red Bull suffered a double DNF. It allowed Mercedes and Hamilton to snatch P3, despite looking well off the pace and still suffering from porpoising. How did K-Mag get on, you ask? He finished P5 on his return to F1, and we loved it. Just a week later in Saudi Arabia, Verstappen made amends, winning in Jeddah and firing a response to Leclerc and Ferrari. Meanwhile, F1 confirmed we'd be heading to Las Vegas for a night race in 2023, and I for one can't wait. And if my bosses are listening to this right now, please send me to Las Vegas. Off the track, we were seeing the effect of Putin's war in Ukraine, with Roman Abramovich putting Chelsea up for sale, and stolen notebooks belonging to Charles Darwin were mysteriously returned after 22 years to the Cambridge University Library. April. For the first time since 2019, or 2020 depending on how you look at it, Formula 1 returned to Australia and Charles Leclerc hit back again, winning with maximum points from pole, whilst Verstappen suffered another DNF. A gap was already forming between the early title rivals, and Ferrari seemed to have got their act together. But at the end of April, Max hit back again, as true champions do, taking 26 points on top of 8 for winning the sprint race at Imola. But rather than me talk you through it, here's Simone from the Italian edition of GP Blog to talk you through it.
Thanks, Joe. Let me take you back to the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Do you remember who won it? It's easy, Max Verstappen. But at the time, the Dutchman was still 46 points behind Charles Leclerc in the World Championship. In Imola, qualifying took place on Friday and saw Max Verstappen take the pole position. On Saturday, he won the sprint race, overtaking Charles Leclerc with just 2 laps to go. As we already said, he was the first to cross the finish line also on Sunday, while his teammate Perez came second and Norris finished third, being the only driver outside the top 3 teams to finish on the podium this year. It was a night and weekend for Ferrari. Sainz was hit by Ricciardo and had to abandon the race, where Leclerc spun and finished only 6th.
In April, Will Smith stole the show at the Oscars for slapping Chris Rock after Rock made a G.I. Joe joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. But which animated movie franchise The Rock and Pinkett Smith both star in? May in Miami. How does that sound? Pretty good, right? Well, that was the reality as F1 headed to the streets of America, but it didn't live up to the billing, as the Miami Grand Prix failed on overtaking and it was somewhat a snooze fest. However, it did mark the start of a period of dominance for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. He'd win 2 of the 3 races in May, while Sergio Perez won in Monaco, a win which would later cause controversy. F1 confirmed that they wouldn't be replacing the Russian Grand Prix, meaning a 23-race schedule was confirmed for the season. In snooker, Ronnie O'Sullivan equalled Lee Hendry's record of 7 world titles. Liverpool's hopes of a quadruple went up in flames as Man City won the Premier League and Real Madrid won the Champions League, and Ncuti Gatwa was named as the actor to play the 14th Doctor in Doctor Who. June. Now, I had my ACL reconstructed at the start of the month, but it was Charles Leclerc trying to reconstruct his title charge in June. However, 2 weeks after missing out on victory in Monaco, Verstappen was back to winning ways in Baku. He backed it up in Canada by winning again. There were glimmers of hope for Mercedes as Hamilton scored his first podium since the opening race in Bahrain. He finished P3 in Montreal. June was quiet on the whole as we approached a frantic July, but the Queen celebrated her Platinum Jubilee. But which rugby team won a record 11th Rugby Premiership title? July. Well, the 7th month of the year was busy. 4 races, and it was going to be a crucial spell in the title race. Max Verstappen had overhauled Leclerc, who had slipped to 3rd behind Perez heading into the British Grand Prix. Ferrari led the way at Silverstone, but it wasn't Leclerc. It was Carlos Sainz, who took his first ever F1 win. But the race will be remembered for the freeway duel between Hamilton, Leclerc and Perez. It really was a sign that the new regulations were working. Verstappen could only manage 7th. Leclerc ate up more ground on his Dutch rival, winning the Austrian Grand Prix, but all his hard work was undone in France as he retired from pole and Verstappen won. The Dutchman's advantage was extended in Hungary as he reasserted his dominance. Sebastian Vettel confirmed he'd be retiring from Formula 1 at the end of the season, bringing an end to a remarkable career in Formula 1. Thanker Seb. Michael Massey also left his role at the FIA. Elsewhere in the world, England's Lionesses won the Women's European Championships, Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister, and GP Blog went global as we launched around the world. August. The summer break meant the silly season commenced, and Fernando Alonso was the first to confirm where he'd moved to, as he signed with Aston Martin, opening up a place at Alpine. We only had 1 race in this month, and that was in Belgium, after Spa managed to save its place on the calendar. Unsurprisingly, Max kept his momentum, winning the Belgian Grand Prix as Leclerc slipped further back, finishing P6. The Premier League returned in August, and that meant Erling Haaland started giving opposition defences nightmares, prompting us to compare his charge to Verstappen's. He would have 16 race wins?
16 race wins in 22 races.
It's just absurd, and I am fed up with it. It's a bit like Haaland in the Premier League. Like, we need a petition to ban Max from racing Formula 1.
Haaland, I've got him captain FPL, so it's fine.
Yeah, me too.
Whereas Max,
I think we all have. But how many Premier League goals did he score in August? September. Maximum points for Max kicked off the month of September, and that is home race and all. He won the Dutch Grand Prix from pole, and it looked like there was no way back for Leclerc. Nick de Vries can consider himself a little unlucky. After winning Formula 2, he missed out on a seat in F1. However, when Alex Albon got appendicitis, the Dutchman had a chance to shine, and his audition at Williams went well, as he scored 2 points at Monza, another race won by Max Verstappen. Alpine and McLaren battled it out for Oscar Piastri's signature, and in very underwhelming fashion, McLaren won, with the Aussie replacing his compatriot Daniel Ricciardo next season. September saw the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Her reign of 70 years and 214 days was the longest of any British monarch, and the longest verified reign of any female monarch in history. October. We're in the business end of the season now, and if anyone was going to stop Verstappen, they'd have to be quick. The first of 4 races in October started well for Leclerc, finishing P2 in Singapore, with his rival down in P7. But a week later, it was all over, as a rain-hit Japanese Grand Prix eventually saw Verstappen crowned champion, with 4 races to spare. The FIA once again embarrassed themselves, as they couldn't do the maths properly, and everyone was left guessing whether Verstappen had actually won the title. It was a slightly underwhelming way to become a 2-time world champion. They also let a recovery vehicle enter the track, making it a weekend to forget for race control. The USA and Mexico followed a similar pattern as Verstappen won both races. Over at Williams, Latifi was heading out of the door as they confirmed Logan Sargent would race in 2023, assuming he got enough super license points. Gasly filled the void at Alpine, allowing De Vries to fill in at AlphaTauri. Liz Truss's brief reign as Prime Minister came to an end, but how many days did she last in the role? November. The season is drawing to a close, but Mercedes were yet to win a race. But at Interlagos, that all changed. Marcos, from the Brazilian edition of GP Blog, was at the race in Sao Paulo, so I'd say he's in a better position than me to talk about a great weekend for the Silver Arrows.
Thank you, Joe. So let me take you back to the Brazilian Grand Prix, where we already started the weekend with a huge surprise on Friday, when Kevin Magnussen achieved his first pole position in his Formula 1 career. And the surprises didn't stop at the qualifying, because George Russell was able to dominate both Saturday and Sunday races to conquer the first victory for Mercedes in the 2022 season. So even though the championship was already decided, Brazil didn't let down and gave us a lot of action during the Brazilian Grand Prix.
The season ended in a very similar fashion to that of the rest of the campaign, with Verstappen on top of the podium, but the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix will be remembered for Seb's farewell. At the end of it all, Max claimed his second Drivers' Championship with 454 points, a whopping 146 more than his nearest rival Leclerc, all after DNFing 2 of the first 3 races. World Cup fever struck the globe in November as Gareth and the Three Lions begun their quest for glory, and People's Magazine named Chris Evans, aka Captain America, as the sexiest man alive. December. Unlike previous years, the season was over, but the merry-go-round had only just begun. Jost Capito left Williams, and Mattia Binotto departed Ferrari. The Scuderia opted for Fred Vasseur to take his place. Over at McLaren, Andreas Seidel left to join the Audi Revolution, with Italian Andrea Stella replacing him. When Mick Schumacher left Haas, he joined Mercedes as a reserve driver, being replaced by Hülkenberg. Lionel Messi enjoyed his crowning moment as Argentina won the World Cup on penalties, but fifth in line to the throne, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle dropped their controversial Netflix series. But what were their royal titles? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is January all the way through to December in the world of Formula 1 and a little beyond that too. It's been a pleasure bringing you content this year, and I hope you're ready for more next year. If you've been taking part in our quiz, the answers are on screen now. Let us know how you got on in the comments below. I'm off to enjoy some New Year's festivities, and I hope you are too. But from myself, Cameron, Toby, thank you, and we'll see you all in 2023.